Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Claire Douthit and I work on DataBank's marketing team. I'm here just to kind of introduce our speakers for the day, introduce our topic, and then we'll get started. This is the last in kind of an ongoing series that we've been doing focused on OnBase, and I'm really excited about our topic for today. Many of you know us as your partner in all things OnBase and ECM and workflow, but there is actually a whole other side of our business that often we don't always see a lot of intersection. So we're going to talk today about document processing, specifically intelligent document processing, and what we call content intelligence here at DataBank. So this is kind of a longstanding part of our business, and we're really excited to talk about the implications or what that means for OnBase. It's really thinking about what happens before you start working with your documents and data within the platform. So like I said, my name is Claire. I'm going to be here just a couple housekeeping notes, helping to run Q&A, run chat. Please submit your questions throughout. We will have time at the end, but we can also, try and answer questions throughout if there's something that you really want to address. So please, feel free to also just have, some conversation, talk to each other throughout. We always like to have fun and lots of interaction during these webinars. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers for the day, or have them actually introduce themselves. So Chris, do you want to get it started for us?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Masi. I'm a business analyst at DataBank. I've been with DataBank for about 2.5 years at this time, but I've been working with OnBase for 20 years plus at varying capacities in different organizations such as health insurance, financial services, and life insurance, and now with DataBank being a business analyst. So got a pretty in-depth knowledge of OnBase and some of the institutional problems that are faced with records and documents. And I live over in the Green Mountain State in Vermont.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. I'm jealous of the amazing weather you're probably experiencing right now.
It's spitting snow today, but that's okay.
Oh, maybe not jealous then. All right, Charlie.
Yeah, so I'm Charlie Bauer. I'm our commercial practice director here at DataBank and have been with DataBank, certainly working with OnBase for almost 19 years now, right? So experience certainly in our centers as well, which I look forward to talking to everyone about. I live in Annapolis, Maryland, and I guess we're all on the weather topic. I am very, very ready for the summer and the end of travel and snow and things like that.
I can believe it. I can believe it. Thanks, Charlie. Great to have you with us today. All right. So last but not least, Mike Decker. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I'm Mike Decker. I've been with DataBank for 16 years, working with all things documents, and quite a bit of experience with OnBase earlier in my career, but certainly we feed a lot of OnBase systems from our intelligent document processing centers. Looking forward to the webinar today.
Thank you, Mike. We will not ask you to share a fun fact about yourself. Okay.
Thank you.
So agenda today, I'll just walk through this briefly. So we really wanted to talk about, document processing. It's something that we get a lot of questions about. It's something that we're seeing certainly with the rise of AI, so much interest in this kind of technology outside of maybe the automations that we do or that we help you guys with in OnBase. So we want to talk about, what are some of the biggest problems that OnBase users are facing when it comes to your documents and your data, and how are we getting all of that into your system in a way that is really setting you up for success. So that's kind of the overarching theme of today. We want to talk about, when we say AI-powered document processing, what exactly do we mean? There's a lot of buzzwords in there. We want to really kind of demystify that and break that down. And then also looking at different processing methods. There's a lot of different kind of, we've worked and kind of run the gamut of these different processing methods, like OCR is probably a term that you heard. And so we really want to talk about the evolution of document processing and how we're seeing great results today. We're also going to get to talk through some case studies and see kind of this a little bit of a sneak peek of platforms that we use, some specific examples that I think will help to make this feel less conceptual and more practical, which is our goal. We will have time for a Q&A at the end. And just so you all know, we will have this webinar recorded and it will be sent out tomorrow morning. So you'll all have access to this recording as well as some additional materials that we will be sending out. A couple final notes. I hope you all have seen the promotion that we've been doing around our upcoming event. It's called OnBase Camp Innovation Day. This is how we're capping off this series that we started back in the fall. I'm really excited about this event because all of our content for the day is totally driven by you guys. It's driven by our OnBase client community. It's really dedicated to sharing success stories, digging into problems that are being solved using OnBase, really learning how some of your peers and colleagues are using OnBase in really creative ways. And so it's a half-day event, it's a hybrid event, so it really allows anyone to join who's able to that day. I will pop the registration link in the chat here in a minute. And if you haven't registered and if you're able to attend, I encourage you to. We will have some content that we'll be recording that day, but it's really something that it's going to be more of an a live experience, if you will. So I'd encourage you to attend even just for part of it that day. We have session details and agenda and all of that stuff on the registration page. So very excited about that. It's coming up on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. We didn't intentionally choose that date, but it just sort of worked out that way. Okay, last but not least, we've done some intros. I want to do a fun little icebreaker. This is maybe a little bit cheesy, but bear with me, guys. I wanted to ask, we're talking about AI-powered document processing. AI is everywhere, chat, GPT, all of that. Very buzzy right now, but I wanted to ask, and maybe you'll have some more like old school answers too, which I think is fun. But what is your favorite sci-fi or AI inspired book, movie, TV show? Anyone want to go first? Charlie, how about you?
I will go with the Terminator series. So I'll go Terminator 2.
Terminator. All right. That's solid. And you guys, if, attendees, please, we'd love to hear your answers in the chat too. Looking for maybe some inspiration on that. Mike, how about you?
I'll go with the Netflix first season. I didn't watch the rest of a show called Altered Carbon. A lot of AI and fancy sci-fi stuff in that one. So it was really good.
I hadn't heard of that. That's cool. Brian Evans just said 2001, A Space Odyssey. I actually am going to go with Brian on that. I agree.
It's a good one.
It's a classic, kind of the standard in my opinion. Okay.
I can't let you do that, Dave, right?
Chris, what about you?
The iRobot is one that has always stuck in my mind as, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I've seen that one, but yeah, that's very familiar for sure. Definitely lots of robot language happening these days. Okay, well, thank you. You guys can continue to put your answers in the chat. If you'd like, keep that conversation going. Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you in just a second, but before I do, I actually did want to start with a quick poll. I actually may have already said this answer, so I apologize, everyone. I hope you didn't catch me, but this is a little bit of a softball question, but I wanted to ask, what does IDP stand for? We've got a few different answers. Looks like we're tied between two. And my fellow hosts, you guys are not allowed to vote. I would hope that you would know the answer. I think you do.
We got it.
Okay. If you said intelligent document processing, you are correct. We did also have identity provider, which that can stand for, but the spelling's a little bit different capitalization. So yes, we are going to be getting into intelligent document processing, also known as IDP. And to kick this off and get us started, Chris is going to be talking about biggest problems facing OnBase users when it comes to this topic. So Chris, I'm going to stop talking and let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So the big three, we'll just get them out there, right? So you got the big piles of paper. Everybody's dealing with that. As much as we want digital mail rooms, we know we still have paper coming into the systems and into our organizations, right? And then managing incoming records. So now that we might have somewhat digitized our mail rooms, now you have email boxes or other portals where they're dropping off files and they're coming to rest somewhere. And then within OnBase, you have unstructured data in OnBase, potentially. Maybe it's got some keywords to it, but there's more rich information that's available, but we've only allowed or could afford a certain amount of indexing because manual indexing is costly. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, so let's talk about the first one, paperweight, right? We can all think about this and all the problems that we see with it, right? It's inaccurate or incomplete data. Generally, it can't tell much of a story of what's going on depending on how it was filed in a cabinet. It has inherited risk as far as manual data entry. Can't read handwriting. I know I've been in operations teams where, saw folks going around and saying, what would you call this thing? A B, an 8, what character is this thing? And that goes into our systems as a keyword or classification, and then we already have data misrepresented at that time. Wasting time and effort. Manual entry, we know, is very, very time consuming. And quite honestly, some folks really enjoy it, but as humans, we can put our skills to a little bit more better efforts, if you will, that is human related, is that we can't get technology to really take care of for us currently. Limited accessibility. So paper really does restrict how many folks at one given time can access it, unless you're all crowded around a particular artifact or a pile of paper to look at it. That's not very effective and efficient. So another note I want to speak to is along the risk is think about business continuity or disaster recovery. So if you have mountains of paper and you have some sort of audit risk, a fire or something to that effect, most organizations would be in a significant situation from that perspective. With all these combined issues, you can see that's a pretty significant impact when it's on paper. Next slide, please. Okay. Let's see. I thought we were, yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. All right. So where are our records, right? So we have a couple different themes of records. They're archived, so they're historical. They might be stored on paper or maybe even other mediums, if you will, microfiche, microfilm. If they're archival, they're not really accessed that much, but when they are, it's generally for something important, right? Think about litigation or audits. You may have to go back to something over time. So where are these archived items? To get these things converted, typically when folks are going through an event, they want to partner and do it at high volume with somebody to get them digitized, which makes sense. That's a pretty significant effort to get done when organizations typically think about it. And they think about when they want to make room, right? Space is a premium still, and they want to get rid of that file room or whatnot, which is fantastic. But hopefully they're thinking from a disaster recovery perspective as well, because if it's sitting there in an archived paper format or other medium in a physical location without backups, that's a very risky situation. And then we talk about transactional records, right? So this is keeping the organization running, moving things along to get data from point A to point B into a transactional kind of scenario. Hopefully you know where your documents are at all times throughout that transaction, but that really does depend on the solutions you have in place in order to manage that transaction from beginning to end of it, to that archival state, if you will. And really, when it comes to transactions, you want it as quick as possible, right? Total cost of ownership and speedy throughput. And many have faced the information where it's sort of like we got to do more with less, right? We've all heard that statement over time. So having efficient processes and systems in place to get things in that transactional state is critical. But one of the things that falls short is we're collecting only, bytes of information and data, because right now our current process is manual entry to collect it. And sometimes it's not even being done during that transaction. It's kind of an afterthought. So like, how are we going to classify our documents after we've gotten this transaction through? And that becomes a challenge over time. So when we talk about the content types of our data, right? So you have structured, which if you look at this graphic, it kind of narrows it down a little bit to the different themes, if you will, right? So structured is something you can count on being organized in a way that's reliable, right? And that's obviously the best for especially intelligent processing, if you will, because it's something you can count on. Think of a tax form. It is something that's always the same way, always, right? And you can do that. Semi-structured, a little bit looser information where you get some digital forms, maybe some more option blocks going on or whatnot, or emails, which has, some structure to it, but then you have that loose messaging, if you will. Unstructured runs the gamut, right? Think of bigger contracts and things like that, heavy text type of documents. Those are a little bit harder to finite and extract data from typically because it's not in some said place. There could be limited or no tagging at all. Okay, so what can you do with your structured data? It's a foundation of any kind of automation, right? It's essential for clean and accurate extraction. And basically, it's the fuel for your probably missing if you have a bunch of PDFs or paper files sitting around, right? So if you have this type of structured data, you can really grab these items, train a solution, and get that data you really want out of it. So when we talk about PDFs, just for a good example, right? Like I can't imagine your organizations don't have these file shares with tons of files, PDF or what have you. It doesn't matter really the format as much, but they're sitting there in some deep convoluted folder structure, right? The director of the last director of the last director had this hierarchy that nobody can make sense of today. And even the naming conventions on these said files are all over the place, from date, event, action, whatever you want to do. But we've seen it. We're all seeing that today, right? So having these items out there in this landmine of locations is a problem. It just is. So, how do you take these type of things and ingest it into your repository? How? Because that is like a process that is just unimaginable. So what do we do as organizations? We get an intern or a temp. Sounds wonderful, but they don't know our business typically. So then you're going to have to take a knowledge expert to have them look at these files and help train them to get them into some classification, if you will, or hopefully into a repository. Okay, well, temps get a full-time job and leave. Interns, something happens or it's a short engagement, right? So now the project that you had set forth to classify these things manually and reorganize them or get them to a repository just became even more fractured because it was partially done. So we're all living through that. So back to the employees, right? If we have transactions that we're collecting data less manually right from the get-go, and it's part of the interaction transaction where you store files and get classification to them, we're in a much better place. Next slide, please. All right, so we've talked about a lot of the problems, right? So now, what are the different solutions that are available, right? So there's tons of solutions out there. Some don't really integrate well with OnBase. Some are very developer-based, so you're really tied to the ask of change as opposed to managing the change yourselves potentially. Some are premise-based and some are cloud-based. It depends on your particular organization. Do you want to do the file conversion and then ship it off to get it, translated to get that data extraction? Do you want to say, that's not our core competency? Let's move it outside our business here and let that be handled elsewhere. And honestly, you just need to really, think about the capabilities and scalability, right? And really, do you even know what you need right now? I mean, after all this nonsense of information I gave you, probably more confused than ever. And that's fine. So what's really, really, really important is that you need to make sure that you are being coached and counseled with a solid partner, right? Tool is very important, but if you don't have a good partner to guide you along that way, it's probably a setup for failure. So with that, Charlie's going to talk to us a little bit more about that data extraction.
Great, thanks, Chris. And great content, and I'm sure many of the attendees can relate to some of those challenges. So now I'm going to talk about intelligent document processing, or as we know from the poll, IDP. And I know just what everyone wanted, another acronym to try our best to remember. So Claire, we can jump to the next slide here. So, what is IDP, right? It's a lot, but IDP is the automation of data extraction from structured, semi-structured, and unstructured documents, and then converting that into structured, digitized, really actionable information. IDP can use a combination of technologies such as OCR, AI, and machine learning, as Chris mentioned. And this technology stack is used to scan, classify, identify, and extract critical data from documents. One of the key differentiators I want to ensure you all leave here today understanding is that with IDP, we can overcome the limitations that past simple templated-based document capture tools had by streamlining that document processing activities using human-in-the-loop capabilities to specifically handle the exceptions, which will help to train and improve the capabilities and outcomes going forward. IDP can help enable organizations to much more efficiently process large volumes of documents with much less human intervention, all while still driving very high levels of accuracy across a wide range of different document sets. Clients that have deployed this type of technology will benefit by having their workforce focus simply on the exceptions, which are really the documents that the solution had a lower confidence that it accurately identified or perhaps extracted the correct information from those records. As we often see with our customers, the data elements that are being extracted for these projects are often mission critical, right, for various downstream workflows or business processes. So ensuring the accuracy of the data is extremely high is always a top priority. Moving on to the next slide, I want to spend a few moments covering some of the history of how we as DataBank have been processing our customers' records over the years. So we've been providing, these outsourced document processing services for our clients and customers really since we were founded back in '91, right? Certainly the technology and tools were different back then, but many of the same business challenges or themes existed, such as the need for, capturing large volumes of documents, as well as accurately classifying and extracting that critical information from the records. Of course, the document capture portion 30 years ago didn't involve the high-speed scanners that we have today, but rather often planetary microfilm cameras. Over this time span, we've been proven really to be able to leverage the best available technology at the time to capture, classify, and extract the data off of our clients' records. As the technology, during this time period has advanced, we've naturally been able to expand those services that we offer and can provide to our clients. Many years ago, the records that we were capturing had already completed their business process lifecycle and were often really being captured with archiving as the key driver. Right now, today, as we engage with customers, we're talking to them about how best practices really point towards capturing and extracting the data from those documents really at the time of creation or receipt to help maximize the ROI that you've already made in an OnBase. With this shift over time, we've become more of an integral part of our clients' automation success or journey. For many years at this point, we've been processing over 1 billion images every year. And now more than ever before, we're not only processing and receiving paper documents, but also assisting clients with documents that are already digital, right? Perhaps not classified or need, information still extracted from those documents. For DataBank, leveraging IDP solutions truly represents another giant leap forward or milestone in terms of what we're able to offer our clients. Never before have we had the ability to offer the combined level of both automation and accuracy that we can today with these offerings. While some of you may not get as excited as the four of us about this technology, really expect that you'll see those results and get excited from those. On the next slide here, we can move, Claire. We'll cover the evolution from a technology perspective, right? So moving away from kind of the DataBank history and over to some of the evolution of technology that's available. Really, three ones that I want to touch on, right? Fully manual processing, OCR, and of course now IDP. So as you can see from the chart, a lot of information here, but in the early days, it was all manual data entry, which clearly created challenges from a labor perspective. And not just in terms of the cost of that labor, but also understanding that the accuracy levels were largely determined by the operator's ability and knowledge of those documents that they were processing. OCR, of course, introduces that computer automation into the mix, but still requires a significant lift from the human operators in order to achieve the levels of accuracy that most of our customers and, quite frankly, the business processes warrant or demand. With IDP, we're finally at the stage where we can truly maximize the advantage that technology can bring to the table, along with that human expertise. With IDP, there are no limitations in terms of the content types that can be processed, and the accuracy levels can actually largely be dictated upon the critical, the certain piece of information that you deem as critical as the customer. So moving on, Claire, to the next slide, what's powering IDP, right? So how does all this work, and what's powering it to deliver this leap in automation and accuracy? And without getting too far into the technical weeds, there's really three key pieces with artificial intelligence or AI, machine learning or ML, and human intelligence, right? So AI is more of an umbrella term for solutions that helps computers think and make decisions much like a human, right? Machine learning, on the other hand, is really a branch off of that artificial intelligence tree, which is based on the idea or principle that systems can learn from data and can use computer algorithms to identify patterns and make decisions without any human intervention. When we feed machine learning solutions large sets of data and documents, it can analyze and essentially create this library or learning set from which to make future decisions. The last component that powers IDP is that human intelligence component, which we'll cover here on that next slide. So why is human intervention or validation so key to IDP? While the technology behind, which we just spoke about with AI and machine learning, are really great, we're firm believers that in order to deliver the type of accuracy that our customers have come to expect from us, we need to couple this with human in the loop approach. With IDP, that human validation is often used to deal with exceptions. It could be pre-processing, classification, and even machine learning training to help drive the industry-leading results that we expect. While the technology can improve or learn, in this case, over time, to minimize the need for human operators, we understand in the real world, our clients often don't have much control or influence over the variety of documents that they receive for processing, as well as the constant changes in formats and versions that these records inevitably have. So having subject matter experts process the exceptions really allows for the technology to continue to advance and ultimately deliver the best outcomes from an automation and data integrity perspective. So now I'm going to have Mike take the mic for a moment, and he's going to walk us through what IDP looks like for DataBank and provide some real customer examples for the group here.
Great, thanks, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
So, before I kind of show you some of the technology that we've used over the last few years, I'd like to tell a little bit of a story about our first experience. And it's been a little bit over 2 years ago. We engaged with the state of Massachusetts to convert millions of birth, death, and marriage records. And we elected at the time to not do it with our standard tools. The world had changed with COVID. We decided that the cloud was coming into focus, that we were going to do this differently, right? And so there we were. We put 45 terabytes of images in what felt like the other end of the galaxy, right? So there all that content was, away from all the stuff that we knew how to do and all the tools that we had experience with. And all of a sudden we had to figure out how to do it kind of new, right? So, some of the things I'm going to say will probably sound kind of silly, right? But one of the first things we ran into is, oh, hey, that image is upside down. How do we fix that, right? We know how to do that. We've been doing that forever. It's a common occurrence in this. So we had to stop. We had to consider how we might handle that, right? So the other part of it is, how do you reconcile all of that, right? All of our local systems, we have processes to do that. We had to invent new ones online, right? And we had to also understand how it scaled, right? And we fumbled along the way, right? And we made mistakes. You can see some of the benefits that the client is getting out of this. Part of this process, we actually built a live portal. So as we worked on this content, the client could actually actively use it. And they did. They had an accident in their records room, and we were able to quickly, because of this innovation that we tried, we were able to quickly get them complete access so they could continue to fulfill citizen requests, right? So that was a great advantage of getting up there. And I'm going to show you some of the technology that we used and some of the technology that we evolved in using. Massachusetts was one example of that. Next slide, please, Claire. We also, went and processed about 5.5 million health care records for a hospital system in the Northeast. And we're in the process of converting some legacy clients that have been clients of ours for 10 plus years in accounts payable to an ID in the cloud, right? And so those are some of the examples of kind of where we've evolved to, right? We're doing a lot more in the cloud, all of those fun things. But the thing that you need to keep in mind with your OnBase systems is we've also been working on ways to bring this stuff that we learned to your OnBase systems. You don't have to go out and purchase an expensive package, implement it, become experts in capture. You can let us help you with that. Learn from our mistakes, right? Next slide, please, Claire. Because this is the truth right here, right? We had a lot of theories in the beginning. We practiced a little bit, but until you actually start doing it, you don't know what you're going to run into. You don't know the problems that you're going to go through. I will tell you, it is very painful. Any of you have gone through rapid change know it's very, very painful. But as this slide shows you, that pain is where you learn, right? And so we want to bring that to your OnBase systems. We want to help you get more value out of it. We want to help you unlock your content so that you can make better and faster decisions, right? And so, Claire, I think one more slide. The only other thing I'll say before I jump into a show and tell is you'll hear a lot of people freaking out about GPT is going to replace all of us, all of that stuff. It's not. It isn't the equivalent of human intelligence, right? It really isn't. And I can show you some examples of the why. All of this content that we want to unlock was created by humans, right? And computers have not figured out humans so far. They've done a really interesting job, like ChatGPT and others, but they're not on par with us. So we really feel strongly that on top of all this technology, which can be game changing, that human touch makes it unparalleled. So let's go ahead and I will do my best here to give you a little view of some of the technology we've used. Let me share my screen I will say this, these records are really bad. They're really bad because I'm not going to show you our client's content. I went out to the internet and I found some birth and I think some death records. And the quality is just kind of so-so. I'll zoom in here a little bit. As I do that, maybe you can see it. You can see how fuzzy it is, right? So we're going to go through and I'm going to show you kind of where we started. And what I'm going to show is our Amazon kind of Textract portal. We're adding additional things to it, but this is where we started. So let me pop that up here. So this is it right here, really thrilling stuff, but it's really just to paint a picture for you. So anything you see here isn't necessarily exactly what we do. And while we've used Textract, we now have at least a half dozen other technology partners in this space. So let's take a look and let's see what Textract can do with some of these files. So we'll pull up this death cert, and there are different features. I'm going to start with just some of the basics. And we're going to go ahead and run this. Give me a second here. It's going to come back, and it's going to give you a view of what Textract thinks of this record. This is where we started, the basics. Everybody on here has seen this before. If you decide to OCR a PDF, you know, this is the equivalent of what you get. A bunch of text words, right? And we can click on the page and you'll notice it highlights that. Well, this worked for us with Commonwealth, and we used this stuff right here and built coordinate-based templates to extract things. But I'm going to tell you, we learned really, really quickly why coordinate-based things don't work very well, even on standard forms like that. It's because of humans, right? So one thing that's very important in any vital record is a name. And it's not just the given name, it's also the AKA names. Notice here, the state of Colorado at this time decides to put all their AKA names up here. So coordinate-based templates don't do a good job of also picking that stuff up. So we started to migrate to a more advanced version of Textract that does key value pairs. And what do I mean by that? It's going to try to determine what the field name is and what the value is. And you can take a look at this and you can see it's probably not perfect. It did okay here. It kind of got an age, but that label may not be consistent across millions of vital records. So that becomes a challenge too. So, you know, as we progressed through these three different collections of records, we ultimately completely changed. And we migrated to a different provider that was able to, you know, in a true IDP fashion, lift this stuff off. And we were able to achieve with the last set of birth records an extraction rate of about 96%, right? And the way that we measured that was this client had data, but they didn't have them associated with the records. So what we did is we extracted all of this information off of the form, and then we compared key values to the client's data set. And as I said, we're averaging or have averaged about a 96 to a 97% accuracy rate in that. And that is zero human intervention outside of feeding the engines, right? So we've got engineers that do that stuff, but our traditional folks in our bureaus and our conversion centers didn't actually review any of this. We let data drive the entire thing, right? And that's pretty powerful. So, you know, anyone who hasn't been living under a rock for the last few years has started to notice Chat GPT. Maybe you've played around with things like Midjourney, generative AI art, all of those interesting things. Well, I want to show you something that is kind of more fun to show than anything else. Amazon came out with this queries capability, right? And what this allows you to do, and I'm using this for show, but it allows you to ask up to 30 questions in natural human language of a record itself, right? So maybe I want to understand what the decedent is. This is a death certificate. So I'm going to ask that. What is the name of? See if I can spell that right. Right? So we're going to ask that. let's go ahead and let's say, what was the date of birth, right? So we'll ask that. We'll ask one more question. Let's do, oh geez, let's see here. Maybe the father's name. And let's see how well this does. I don't know, actually. I don't know how well this will do. So we're going to do that. We're going to run this again. Here, after a few seconds, we'll take a look. And here we go. Isn't that interesting, though? I don't know if you're noticing this here. It actually didn't pick up the decedent's name. It picked up the first AKA name, right? And so this is the reason why we need humans. You know, did it get the date of birth? It did actually get the date of birth. And if I click here, it looks like it got the father's name as well, right? So let your mind kind of run with the possibilities of what you could do if you could ask a computer questions about the content you had, right? And think about those collections that have some value to them for you that you've just not been able to do anything with, right? And trust in the fact that Charlie, Chris, Claire, everybody at DataBank is committed to helping you get the most out of your OnBase system, right? And we feel we can help by unlocking your content and truly making it available to you in OnBase in a usable way. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. So thanks for letting me do my dime store tour of what we've been doing the last 2 years. I hope you found something and got something out of that.
Thank you, Mike. I loved your dime store tour. I feel like that was more than a dime. I thought that was great. It was really interesting to see you, maybe a quarter, yeah, running those queries. I did want to go ahead and I'll share my screen again so everyone can see my wonderful questions slide. But I do want to make sure we have some time for Q&A. So if you guys have questions, please, make sure you enter those into the chat, or you can always reach out after the webinar today. There were just a couple of things that have popped up so far. So I believe, Mike, you had mentioned, I think, something around having over a dozen different technology partners that we work with. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? Why is that something that's, I guess, beneficial? And what are some of those partners maybe?
Sure. So we're working with companies like Knowledge Lake. You may have heard of them before. They are a cloud capture based tool set that uses fingerprints. So kind of that template-based process on applications where you want to get really high degrees of accuracy, right? And they are in the process of migrating to also fingerprintless models, which a lot of the other vendors that we use do. And interestingly enough, we just learned that they are starting to test a private version of ChatGPT that Microsoft makes available to them. So that's an interesting technology partner. It's been a really good one for us. They helped us with a different hospital system, not the one I talked about. They helped us with basically processing medical records with a 1400 document type taxonomy, which is pretty wild, right? But it's successful, and they did a really good job. A couple of the other ones that we're working with, a company called Super AI and Illuma. Those are a couple of the technology partners that we do additional work with. And there are others. We're constantly on the hunt for additional technology because it's so rapidly changing.
Yeah. A couple of other questions that have come through. So do all of these solutions require a cloud-based solution? Are there any options for on-prem installs?
No, pretty much all of the ones that I'm thinking of off the top of my head are cloud-based. There are definitely options in the traditional vein for local install and local consumable kind of IDP tech.
Yeah, I don't know if that question was OnBase is on-prem or in the cloud, right? So maybe talk to that, Mike, as well, in terms of flexibility if their OnBase system is on-prem versus cloud and how they could interact with these types of technologies.
Yeah, it does. It honestly doesn't. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's a great point, Charlie. I maybe didn't understand the question from that perspective. So it actually doesn't matter where your OnBase system lives, right? That's kind of the neat thing about this. Mm-hmm. So if you've got an on-prem system like some of our clients do, we can work with you in a variety of ways of extracting a large volume of data that may already be sitting in there. I'm not necessarily the OnBase expert. So our development team, I know, has built some tools for extracting things using workflow to basically send content out and get a response and basically bring it right back into your system using a variety of methods. And one way that we do that is in OnBase, I believe there's something called a doc handle or a doc ID. And so they send the files with that, and all that we have to do is pipe back the data. It makes it very lightweight. You're not shoving images back and forth, right? Just data. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it really doesn't matter where your OnBase system lives. Any of this technology is available.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If there's any follow-ups to that, you guys can feel free to put that in the chat. But thank you both. Are there any options available? This is another question that's come in. Are there any options available for a high page count document? Like if we're looking between 1,000 or up to 10,000 pages?
Yeah, it's more of a file size limit. I think I mentioned the larger health system in the Northeast that we did some work for. One of our providers has more of a file size limit, and they can up it if they understand kind of, if the collection is going to be very large like that. And I believe that limit was somewhere in the 70 to 80 meg, so it was more of a file size limit. But in that case, I know we processed somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000 to 9,000 page files. They just take a little longer, right? OCR is still kind of a foundation, so you got to do that with each page. But these cloud providers can scale, horizontally, so it's less of an issue. And by the way, the largest page count I've ever seen for a PDF is 47,000 pages. Oh. And that is quite a doozy. Wow. My God. So anyway,
that's a click. Get a cup of coffee. Come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Get a couple of cups of coffee.
This is interesting. Yeah. So, wondering if you guys can kind of speak to this kind of scenario that's been sent in. So, this is coming from Steve. So we have a requirement for an archival solution of 4+ million documents representing 20 terabytes of data. We currently have an on-prem OnBase implementation with approximately 1.5 million documents. The documents would be largely unstructured, so we're struggling with the correct approach to bring them into OnBase. The data is unstructured, so any forms-based implementation is not viable. How can IDP help with this?
Well, I'll go back again, and this was an eye-opener for, and I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. The healthcare records that we process are typically loose, sometimes referred to as ambulatory, so they can be records from any medical provider. And there is, truly no given structure to them. You may see repeats of similar forms, but things that we do in those instances are we create a taxonomy for classification, and we feed those in, and the system will tell us what it thinks it is. And then on top of that, if there's something like in the case of this large health system in the Northeast, dates were really important. So we set up patterns looking for dates to extract, right? And we were looking, I think, for the most recent date, if memory serves, and that's what we would do. So in a string of, let's say, a 100-page file, if there were 70 different dates, we would take the most recent one. And then on top of that, one of the big concerns in healthcare, I'm sure everyone can relate to this, is somebody getting a mixed patient chart. So we actually had routines set up to look for name differences within a single record. And it would either go ahead and do a split right then and there, or it would flag that for review by a human, right? So, you know, it really is important with something of that size to understand, you know, what we're after, right? And as long as we can get that down and it's logical, then we can probably build an engine to help process that.
You know, I would say that
I don't know if that answers the question.
Mike, at the end of Mike's last slide, he mentioned kind of us helping you guys maximize, you know, what you've done with OnBase, right? And maybe to take a step further is also maximizing the archives that you guys already have created, whether that's in OnBase or in other repositories, shared drives, things like that, using, you know, DataBank, right? And certainly the IDP solutions in that stack, we can help extract more information, better information, different information than you may have already in the past with keywords and things of that nature, other lookups and databases. So certainly would, you know, encourage you to pick up the phone, give us a call, and love to dive into that archive with you and then the requirements specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good point, Charlie. And I mentioned it with the Vital Records application, but data is king too. You may have a data set that doesn't, you know, quite easily relate to the records that you want to process. We should still look at it and talk about it, because in a lot of these instances, right, we are using client data to help enrich this content.
Thank you, guys. Okay, a couple more questions. Do these solutions have the capability to essentially build a table of contents where IDP can identify where certain text is on certain pages?
Sure, I fully understand that one. So, I mean, if you have a pattern of information that you're looking for, again, like a date or a string of numbers, a certain character count, something like a social, it can hunt and find it wherever it is. But I'm really not sure I understand that question fully.
Okay. All right, Andrew, if you want to,
not sure Charlie or if anybody else has that one.
No, I think that one's probably going to be a conversation about what exactly you want in terms of a content table of content.
Yeah. I would love to talk about it.
Right. That's where I was hung up. I was like, what's the representation of table of contents? You know, I'll go back to Word or PDF bookmarking, right? So I think with a little more discovery.
It's always good to talk. Yeah. It's always good to talk about the theoretical. I very, very much like the actual when we can get down to it, which is something you can't pull off in a webinar.
Right.
So, you know, seriously, if you have lingering questions at the end of this, you know, please reach out to us. We would love to sit down and talk to you about your use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. One final note, something that's come in is also just around, you know, the OnBase integration to IDP. I know that's something that we're always also happy to sit down and talk to you guys about. So I don't know, Mike, Charlie, Chris, any kind of thoughts around that integration or comments that might be appropriate or helpful for this audience?
The neat thing about all of these IDP vendors is they all use RESTful APIs, which means if you can program for it, you can communicate with it. And that's how we are doing it today. And so it's very easy to pull off in a system as robust as OnBase.
Yeah, the integration isn't the challenge.
It's
I think really sitting down, as we talked about, seeing the documents, talking about the challenges you guys have, the information you're looking to extract, or the separations you're looking to create. So I'll say that's the lift and probably the fun part for Mike, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's painful too.
There's so many inputs. There's so many ways to get things, as many people know, hopefully on this webinar, to get into OnBase that, you know, whether you document, import, process, API, you know, all it takes is a little bit of information to get it ingested into OnBase. It's what is that information extraction that you're trying to gather to make it into OnBase, you know, that more rich information.
All right. Well, thank you all for answering questions. If there is anything else that you all want to go over, you guys are always welcome to reach out to us or to your DataBank contact. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for the day. So thank you all for being with us. The next steps is really, we're going to send you some stuff in your email. We're going to send you a copy of the recording. We're also going to send you a copy of this guide to understanding intelligent document processing. It has some really great information just around how and why and what. It's really kind of talking beyond just, how we approach it, but really kind of from a more industry perspective. So we'll be sending that to you. And, we'd also love if there is anything, like the team has been mentioning here, there's a lot of different things that we can customize and work with you on. So we would love to answer additional questions. If there's anything else that you all would like to go over with us, we can, certainly sit down and do another demo, something that's maybe more kind of in detail, as well as really just kind of talking through really more of what your needs are. So we are always available for that. But thank you all so much for being with us today. I'm going to do one final shameless plug for Innovation Day, because I forgot to mention earlier that we are raffling off free passes to Community Live during Innovation Day. So that in itself to me is a great reason to join us. You could win a free pass to Vegas, not to Vegas, but to the conference in Vegas. We have about 4 that we're going to be raffling off. So we hope to see you there. And thank you all. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.